أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين شفيع ذنوبنا وطبيب نفوسنا وحبيب قلوبنا أبي القاسم محمد وآله الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المظلومين وأصحابه المنتجبين ومن تبعهم بإحسان إلى قيام يوم الدين بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي أما بعد السلام عليكم جميعا ورحمة الله وبركاته أعظم الله أجورنا وأجوركم بمسابنا بأبي عبد الله الحسين عليه الصلاة والسلام. The great appeal that Islam had at the outset was in its challenging the established norms and customs and in showing the nonsensical nature of what the Arabs and the pagans were doing and the irrationality of it. The Quran asks them to think, does it make sense? Would you want to worship a God that ordains indecency, bloodshed, so on and so forth? And people's minds were sent into curiosity. That curiosity was ignited in their minds. They began to think, is it right to bury your daughters? Is it right to kill your children through fear of poverty and hunger? Surely, if you believe in an almighty God who is most capable, then you should turn to God and God will sustain them as He sustained you in your childhood. This made sense to people. Then when Islam introduced its own practices, they saw the rationality. They saw that these are productive practices. The Quran says, be equitable, be just. When you transact, give in proper measures, take in proper measures. When you give your word, be true to your word. Do not cheat the orphans. Do not do this. Do not lie. Be good to your parents. So on and so forth. And people saw, yes, this religion is making a lot of sense on the basis of their reason. The Quran said, why don't you check the Quran and find if anything is unproductive in there? Do you find anything inconsistent, unproductive, that is against the way in which a noble human being should be? And the people understood this and they said, yes, this makes perfect sense. Now, in that respect, when the Quran institutionalized prayers, people understood prayers very differently. They said, yes, this is a practice that brings us back to our grounding, brings us back to our center. It centers us and gives us our compass once again. Be connected with God. Be reminded of your purpose. Be reminded of your nobility. Be reminded of your lofty task that awaits you in the life of this world. The prayers meant all these beautiful things. Cut away from a busy lifestyle. Spend a few moments to yourself. Spend them with God. Refresh the heart and mind. All of these things made sense to them. What happened subsequent to this is that Islam lost the rational appeal. It became the same as the pagan cultures. Those ceremonies were being performed for the sake of the ceremonies, not for the sake of the productive values behind those ceremonies. Today, the children are told, pray or else God will send you to hell. They will say, why should we pray? Whereas prior to this, they were told, pray in order for you to become focused within your life so that you can have reinforcement of that great purpose that you are supposed to attain, so that you can be reminded of your nobility, you can be reminded that you are a human going towards God and you want to fulfill your purpose and invite the light of God within your chest. That's what namaz was previously. There was no notion of hell. Salah was a progression into godliness and completion of humanity. Subsequently, Salah becomes what? Pray, otherwise you go to hell. So the question comes, what sort of a God is this anyway, who is so insecure? That if I don't pray to him, he's going to punish me? What difference is he from a tyrannical leader of a country? Obey me or else I will punish you. The rationality left Islam. The women were told, wear hijab so that man can treat you like equal social entities and not objectify you. Therein is your dignity in a context where man associate uncovered hair with availability. They understood this. Today's women are told, wear hijab or else God will punish you. He will hang you by your hair in the fire of hell. Of course, it doesn't make any sense because the rationality of it has departed. Now, what has happened slowly, gradually? Why has Islam deviated so much? The greatest calamity upon Islam has been the Hadith literature. It has undone every beauty that Islam brought to us. The religion of Islam appealed to the initial community because it brought unity amongst the hearts. It brought goodness. It centered us towards God. It empowered us, rid us of superstition. Hadith came later on, justified sectarianism. Just imagine, the Hadith not only went against the ethos of the Quran, that the people of the book who act righteously and believe in God and the hereafter will attain their paradise. There will be no fear upon them nor grief, and their reward will be with their Lord. The Hadith literature not only excluded the people of other faiths, but inevitably threw people who belong to Islam in the pits of hell if they did not subscribe to a particular brand of Islam. And hence today you have this plague within us of intolerance. You say anything that is inconsistent with what one group understands, you're a deviant. You do not believe in a particular sect, you're going to go to hell. Hadith has come and undone all the beauty that Islam gave. Islam said, pray to God so that you can become refined from within. It did not concern itself with how you stand so still and how you do your ruku so still, and that your wudu has to be so precise. It wasn't concerned with all of these things. It was concerned with the effect of that prayer upon the heart and the mind. Hadith came and he said what? Your prayer is not accepted unless your wudu is exactly and precisely done. If your head bounces in the sajda is not accepted, and consequently the salat is rejected. The salat is rejected, you're going to go to hell. It's removed the spirit of Islam and changed it with the form. And hence the whole appeal of Islam has gone with it. What sort of a God is this who is observing me so vigilantly that I can't even breathe whilst takbiratul ihram, or else my salah will be batil? As opposed to standing there saying, Allah Akbar. Now we are focused on how still my hands are, how still my body is during takbiratul ihram. It has shifted everything. It has ruined Islam fully. Now, if you think that we naive people have fallen prey to the hadith and the orators from the pulpit are spewing such material and poisoning the minds of the audience. No, the grand ulama have fallen prey to these ahadith. They have not been immune. In spite of their greatness, as we will demonstrate today, they have fallen foul as well. It is amazing that on the one hand we say Quran is the communication of God, and on the other hand there is no access that we have towards the Quran. Think about it, whether you're a Shia, Usuli or Akhbari, whether you're a Sunni, Deobandi, Brelwi or Salafi, each and every one of us adheres to the Hadith at the expense of the Quran. We go against the Quran in accordance with the Hadith and justify going in accordance with the Hadith against the Quran. This has become the mindset of all of us. Now I'll just as a prelude go into this talk. Look at khums and zakat, the issue of khums and zakat in the Quran. Zakat is mentioned so many times, isn't it? One group has taken on the zakat in accordance with the portions set by the Prophet in his own Medinan context. They haven't understood the essence of zakat. The Quran does not say what the portions are. Zakat is welfare, tax, or whatever you want to call it, in order to serve the needs of a growing community. There are no percentages to it. The other group omits the tens of verses of zakat and adheres to one verse of khums. Who is reading the Quran? Both of them equally have abandoned the Quran. Exclusivism and condemnation of the majority of the Muslims. When the Quran is giving paradise to the Christians and the Jews and the Sabians so blatantly in 2 verses, and multiple other verses talk favorably about them, the Hadith condemns them, so we now condemn all of them. What are we following, the Quran or the Hadith? Age of marriage and responsibility. The Quran has no age of marriage and responsibility. It doesn't, it's the Hadith. Marry at 9 years or 8 years or whatever age. The Quran does not have this. And look at the effect that it has upon the minds of the non-Muslims. They will say their Quran is barbaric and primitive, whereas the Quran has no age stipulation. What are we following, the Quran or the Hadith? Impurity of other human beings. When did the Quran ever say that any human being is najis? Where is the Quran saying any substance is najis anyway? Find me clear argument that says a human being is najis from the Quran, or any substance is mushrikuna najis. The mushrik and najis is a verse in the Quran, so let them not enter the precinct of the holy house. If on the basis of their najasa they can't enter into the precincts of the holy house, yes, then why were dogs allowed to enter? Dogs are more najis than humans, aren't they? So if najasa is to be kept out of the precincts, why were dogs allowed to go there? And then we went as far as to call the Christians and the Jews najis, didn't we? But the delegations of the Christians come to the Prophet's mosque and go inside there and meet with him and the Christians. Where has our mind gone? So we see this, that hadith has been the single biggest calamity upon our heads. There, as I said, I'm just scratching the surface. There are huge problems here, huge problems. A lot more time needs to be dedicated to these studies. And we need to unravel these things and unpack them and explain it away to ourselves to make sense of them and to our audience. But let me just take you through a few things. The Quran, when it was being revealed, who were the Muslims? The people who followed Muhammad Rasulullah, believed in God and believed in His message. Would you agree to that? They were the Muslims, right? The Quran calls these people the Muslims. Is that so? They are the Muslims, the formal Muslims, the uppercase M Muslim. Our grand scholars actually do not believe that they were Muslims. Saduq says that if anybody denies the imamat of Amirul Mu'mineen Salamullah alayhi or any of the imams, it is as if they have denied the Prophet himself. And the one who denies the Prophet himself is a kafir, right? Is a disbeliever. Mufid calls the people who deny imams kafirs. Shaykh Ansari and the great Khui and the great Ansari call these people who deny the imams kafir. Now look at the confusion that is there in their minds. On the one hand, they would have to say that anybody who follows Muhammad Rasulullah and believes in the finality of his message is a Muslim. They will have to admit it. On the other hand, they are saying anybody who denies the imam is a kafir. Now you will ask them, how do you make such statements? And you are such great people. They will say, look, the hadith is sahih. The sahih hadith says this. What are we supposed to do? And I'm going to quote that hadith in a little while. The hadith is sahih. Hadith is saying they're kafir. But you are just admitting that they are Muslims. Whoever believes in the Prophet of Allah, in the finality of his Risala, is a Muslim. So then they will be forced to concede that yes, inner state is one of disbelief, the outer state is one of belief. And read their works. It is there. It shows a full-scale confusion within the minds because we cannot display audacity to reject these ahadith outright and say these are fabrications. Majority of these are fabrications. You can't even contextualize them. Now if you think that this is strange, there is a hadith in Kafi or maybe a number of several hadith in Kafi, and similarly the Sunnis of this hadith, that Quran is incomplete. Things have been omitted from the Quran. And some ahadith amongst the Sunni, and I think Shias as well, that a great portion of the Quran is missing. Think about this. And our orators call Kafi Sharif. Have you heard this, haven't you? Kafi Sharif. The noble Kafi. And of course that was in response, possibly in response to Sunnis calling their books Sahih al-Muslim and Sahih Bukhari. We might have called our Kafi Sahih Kafi. Now, this hadith, compare it against the Quran. Inna nahnu nazzalna dhikra wa inna lahu lahafidhun. We have revealed the remembrance, which is the Quran, and we will guide it. La ya'tihi al-batil. No falsity will come upon the Quran from before it or from behind it. Allah has taken it upon Himself to safeguard the revelation. Are we still? So then why did the great Kulaini record this hadith? Does that mean just because the great Kulaini recorded this hadith that he knew more than what reason can understand? Just because a grand scholar has said it, does it mean we suspend our sense of reasoning? But that was the initial invitation to the Quran, wasn't it? There are hadiths from Bibi Aisha that the Quran is incomplete. Why don't the Sunnis have the audacity to say, even if Aisha has said it, she is wrong? Because she's conflicting with Quran. They don't even have to say that, they just have to say the hadith is false and fabrication, because it doesn't conform with the Quran. Now you look at the Quran, it has so many verses about the Quran itself. You know, in Surah Qiyamah, read those verses. لا تحرك به لسانك لتعجل به. Oh Muhammad, do not hasten to deliver the message. Inna alayna jam'uhu wa Qur'ana. We will gather it, oh Muhammad, don't worry. Even if you forget, we will gather it. Of course, there's a lot of background to this that I don't have the time to go through, and we will, as I said, extensive next year. So now, what is the principle of verification of whatever comes to us in the name of religion? There are two principles. The golden rule in which the Prophet said, Imam Ali narrates this, that the Prophet once came upon his pulpit and he said, many fabricators are fabricating in my name, things that I have not said. So now, O people, compare whatever you get from me against the Quran. If it accords with the Quran, accept it. If it's against the Quran, throw it away. He said, throw it to the wall. That is a golden principle of evaluating hadith. What is the other principle? The other principle is reason. Why do I say reason? Because many a times you find hadith that is sound, perfectly sahih, but it does not make any sense. It lacks common sense. It does not add up. It is inconsistent with historical facts that we know. It is inconsistent with other things that are going on. So that's why in addition to the Quran, we need reason. Many a times, our hadith are weak, but the content, our hadiths change are weak, but the content are strong. Such as what? The hadith that says you will see each other in the palms of your hands in the end of times when the Mahdi comes. Now, you can argue that the chain is weak, but the mobile communication is there. The hadith became true. So the way to assess the hadith is by contrast with the Quran and through other means that reason can understand. But in saying this, Quran and reason takes primacy over the Quran. Why? Because even the Quran's validation and verification was contingent upon reason. The Meccans to whom the Quran was recited did not believe in the Quran, did they? They resorted to rational evaluation of the content of the Quran before they conceded to its validity, didn't they? The Quran said, "In kuntum fi raybin mimma nazzalna ala abdina fa'tu bi suratin min mithli." If you are in any doubt regarding what we have revealed to our servant, then bring something like it from his kind. Allah Tabatabai says that min mithlihi means from the likes of Muhammad Rasulullah. He has never read, he has never written. The Quran says he has never written with his right hand. He has never read, he has never uttered such words. Bring one like him and make him recite the Quran that I am revealing to him. Try and bring one like him. Amazing, isn't it? Because Abu Sufyan and his wife, when they sat and they conversed, They said, but this Muhammad has never ever spoken like this previously. Where is he getting it all from? Such eloquency, such prose, such accuracy, such mysterious knowledge, such history. Where is it coming from? So they were forced to understand it from a higher source. But reason was challenged. If it is from other than God, you will find لَوَجْدُ فِيهِ اخْتِلَافًا كَثِيرًا. You will find a lot of discrepancies in there. So the people set about looking at the Quran to see if they can find any discrepancies. And the amazing thing about the Quran is the highest level of coherency and consistency. It's amazing. The Prophet Muhammad could never have never have understood this or remembered it. You will find in one surah, Isa saying to his people, the sequence is so important, that I raise the dead by the consent of God. I fashion a bird and blow into it, and it becomes a bird by the consent of God. Those sequence of verses are then repeated in a much later surah to be revealed in chronological fashion. But it is compiled near each other. Allah says, O Isa, when you raise the dead by my consent, when you fashioned the bird and blowed your spirit into it by my consent, and it became a bird. Exact, precise consistency in the verses that were revealed earlier and after. And the Prophet could never have remembered this. Or if you find the prophets, they will all say, فَاطِرُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. Ibrahim all the way down to the later prophets. They will always introduce Allah as فَاطِرُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. There is that consistency. Or خَلَقَ الْمَوْتَ وَالْحَيَاةِ. He created death and life, always death and life. Isn't that amazing? He made ears for you, eyes for you, and hearts for you. This sequence is continued within the Quran everywhere. So when reason looks at these things, it can see, yes, this is from a lofty source. Not only the eloquency, not only the depth of meaning, but the beautiful consistency that is within the Quran. And then the reason evaluates furthermore that the prophecies of the Quran are coming true. غُلِبَتِ الرُّومِ. So reason takes primacy even over the Quran in assessment of the Hadith. So now we say, well, why did these ahadith come in the first place? And I want to give you samplers today to see. Why did these ahadith come that are so inconsistent with the Quran? What we find is ahadith were manufactured in order to promote sectarian gains, promote people, promote notions, devalue others. The hadiths were manufactured and they were introduced within Islam, and the naive people of that time could not discern and could not distinguish. This is how cleverly it was done. Like today, we are in the 21st century. I know you might be skeptical of what I say, but had I been wearing a turban, think about it, and had I had a white beard that was quite lengthy, and if I had the badge of an Ayatollah with me, if I were to say something, there is a 99% chance I will get away with it, even if it's a lie and a fabrication. Why? Because the audience are naive in their religious sentiment. They will trust the person who is saying it. If on the other hand I was wearing a suit and a tie or a bow tie, and if I were to say something, even if I was a real Ayatollah, you would not believe anything that I say. This is how the minds work. Attire, the name, the turban, the beard, the suit, the type of color, the tattoos that you have, all of these things play into it. This is how our hadith were introduced. And this is how the naivety was taken advantage of. So we should have a proper method of evaluating the ahadith. The spiritual ahadith have one method, the fiqh hadith have another method, the devotional hadith and the theological hadith have a third method. There are different methods to evaluate different ahadith and contrast them against the Quran. Now, Ayatollah Khouy, he states that Islam is by accepting unity of God, the messengership of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam and the belief in the hereafter, and you are classified as a Muslim. Other grand ulama state that no, belief in Allah and the Risalah of Prophet Muhammad is enough to grant you the status of Islam. What is a Muslim? Who is a Muslim? The one who believes in Allah and the message of God, right? And that's about it, and you're a Muslim. Now this was sent to me from the book of Misbah al-Faqaha from Ayatollah Khui. Now here he states this, that it is indeed established for us within our dua and within our ziyarat to curse the people of the other sect, and the obligatory nature to absolve ourselves from them, and to swear at them excessively, and to blame them and falsely accuse them or rightfully accuse them, and to backbite them. This is Ayatollah Khui saying. Can you imagine? The guy is grand, but look at how he has fallen prey to these ahadith. Because these are the people of innovation and people of doubt. But there is no doubt, rather there is no doubt that these people are all kuffar and kafir. This is the text of Sayyid al-Khui. Because refusal of the wilayah of the imams, even one of the imams, and to believe in false theology such as compulsion brings about disbelief. And the overwhelming reports signify this. And it is apparent that these people are disbelievers. Now, I'm not going to read the whole of this because I want to discuss this now. So he is saying that these are all kafir, these people. So we say, well, you just said they are Muslims. A little while ago, you just said the definition of a Muslim is somebody who says, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah and believes in Qiyamah. How can you say they are kafir? So then he will have to resort to a justification. Well, they are Muslim apparently, and within their inner state, they are kuffar. Now, if you look at Shaykh Ansari's Makasib, he says the same thing. That we do not really believe in their Islam, or I'm just paraphrasing and extrapolating what they have said from their texts. But we have to live with them at a societal level. We can marry them, we can eat from them, so on and so forth. So in that respect, they are Muslim, but otherwise they are not. But since we are forced to live with them, we will have to acknowledge them as Muslims. Now you say, wait a minute. Isn't this supposed to be checked against the Quran? The Quran says, لا تسبوا الذين يدعون من دون الله. Do not curse the people. Don't swear and curse the people who call on other than Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The Quran is saying this. Isn't this against the Quran? How did you go and accept this hadith that is against the Quran altogether? Wait a minute. In the battle of Siffin, the people were swearing at Muawiyah. Didn't Imam Ali say, don't swear. Keep your tongues clean. Admonish them so they can see the truth. Isn't this going against the conduct of the Prophet and Imam Ali? How did you resort to this hadith? Look at the verse of the Quran. إِن جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا أَن تُصِيبُوا قَوْمًا بِجَهَالَةٍ. When an untrustworthy person comes to you with the news, then search out its validity, lest you blame a people falsely. The Quran is saying, even if it is a valid message that you get, you should not accuse somebody falsely. Isn't this going against the Quran? How did you adhere to this hadith against the Quran? And then rationality. Can you imagine if a non-Muslim were to say this, or a Sunni or a Salafi that say, your Imam are telling you to swear at us? Your Imams are teaching you to curse us? Your Imams are teaching you to accuse us? And your Imams are telling you that we are non-believers? And a lot of your Imams married non-Shia women? What sort of Imams were they? Can you see the problems that are there? This is just a sampler that I'm giving here. Now, لا تسبوا الذين يدعون من دون الله. That was the verse. Now, there are, Majlisi brings a hadith. Now think about it, the Sunnis are reading this ahadith and they are senseless. That the 12th Imam will come, he will dig up Abu Bakr and Umar and crucify them. I mean, why? Why would he want to do that? Doesn't he have anything better to do? Doesn't he have to bring about global reform? For all we know, he wouldn't even be concerned with how to pray with your arms open, arms folded. Is this how we've reduced the religion? And Majlisi quotes this. One of the biggest problems within Shia is Biharul Anwar. And we will look into it as we go along in these days. I mean, in defense of Majlisi, he did say, well, I'm not saying all of these are accurate, in his defense. But then why quote these ahadith? Another one is, the 12th Imam will dig out Bibi Aisha and flog her. So the Rawi says, why? He says, because of, he will extract revenge for what he did to Fatima, the daughter of Muhammad. He said, why? He said, why has Allah postponed her punishment? The Imam said, because the Prophet was Prophet of clemency and the Imam brings with him wrath and justice. I mean, shouldn't the Imam be following in the footstep of his grandfather? Now look at his grandfather, the Blessed Prophet Muhammad. He said, do not mutilate even a rabid dog. In the battle of Badr, when the Meccans lost and they fled, the Prophet said, give them a dignified burial, they're dead. They said, but these are the enemies of Allah and your enemies. He said, no, give them a dignified burial. The 12th Imam is going to come and dig up his own grandma and the wife of his grandfather and the one the Quran calls the mother of the believers, even though she has caused the greatest calamity within Islam by fighting against Imam Ali through her jealousy of Bibi Fatima, and we know what she has done and there is no way we can absolve her. But is it in the nobility of the 12th Imam to dig up somebody who is his grandmother? We are a community who are raised with these notions and these ahadith. Do they make sense? Saduq brings a hadith that Imam Ali said, Allah loves you, he was in Kufa, more than he loves anybody else. For in this place is the Musalla of Adam, the house of Nuh, the house of Idris, the Musalla of Ibrahim, the Musalla of my brother Khidr, and of course we know it is the Musalla of the Prophet Muhammad as well. And time will not pass before the black stone is taken from the Kaaba and placed in Masjid al-Kufa. Think about this. What sort of ahadith are this? We've been to Masjid Kufa, haven't we? We have prayed at every Musalla, haven't we? When did Nuh ever get there? When did Adam ever get there? When did Ibrahim ever get there? Are you telling me that Nabi Nuh was in Kufa, then embarked upon the ark and traveled till Najaf amidst a global flood that the whole world talks about, the deluge? Nabi Nuh only traveled a few kilometers. That's it. Does it make sense? You see, in order to promote Kufa as a very spiritual place, they had to create all these tales. And they had to place every musalla in Kufa. Go and pray your 2 rakat namaz in the masjid of Imam Ali Salamullah alayh. It doesn't need to be glorified beyond what it is. Imam Ali is enough. You don't need anything beyond Imam Ali, the musalla of Khidr or Isa or Musa or Ibrahim. You don't need it. It's Imam Ali. And then the other question comes as well, wasn't Prophet Muhammad better than Imam Ali? Yes, well, why didn't any of the prophets go and pray there? Why are all the ones musallas in Kufa and not in Masjid Nabi? Isn't that a valid question? So you can see the senselessness of majority of the things that we are doing now. Another hadith in Ghaibat Nu'maniyah, when the Qaim comes, a host of people will be with the Qaim. And guess what? A host of people will be raised who will be with the Qaim. Behind them all, and the first one to follow Qaim will be Muhammad Rasulullah. I mean, come on. The first one to follow the Qaim will be Muhammad Rasulullah. These are the sort of ahadith we have. So this is now as far as glorifying our religious figures for sectarian reasons. Now we come to jurisprudential things. Now in Babul Ijtihad in Taqleed, when we teach our students, of course people like Khuwi will undermine these ahadith, but many others do quote them And that's why I've brought it as a case in hand. One of the conditions of a mujtahid is what? That they should be legitimate by birth, right? They can't be illegitimate by birth. Now, the mujtahid's brain is what is important, not his legitimacy by birth. Yes? If you have an illegitimate person, right? I mean, he's coming to this world because their parents did whatever they did. It's not his fault. And if he is the Einstein of the time, will you say, oh, no, you're illegitimate of birth? I can't follow your fiqh. Would you say that? And then instead follow somebody else who is not 5% of his caliber. How do we prove the legitimacy of birth is a necessary condition? You could resort to a hadith. What's the hadith? Amazing hadith we have here. Amazing hadith. I'm not going to quote all of them. One of the hadith is the killers of the prophets and their children are all waladuz zina. Have you heard this? The killers of the prophets and their children are all waladuz zina. Got it? Okay. Who is Qabil the son of? Who is the father of Qabil? Nabi Adam. Who is the killer of Habil? It's Qabil. Is Qabil waladuz zina? Just use reason. Does it really make sense? Then you find the hadith of Imam Sadiq. I would much rather give my children the milk of a Christian or a Jew or a Majus rather than give the milk of a waladuz zina, i.e. a woman who has been impregnated through a out of wedlock relationship and she's produced milk. Such disdain. That poor waladuz zina is saying, what fault is it of mine? What wrong have I done? Why do you hate me so much? And the thing is that when we actually, in the 80s and the 90s, when we started preaching Islam, these poor people who converted, they said, oh my God, I'm waladuz zina and this is my state. You know, they were so distraught. They were so defeated within. They didn't have the confidence after that. The Sahaba who converted to Islam, a lot of them were illegitimate by birth, possibly. The Prophet Muhammad just says, Islam yajub. Islam covers whatever went before it. Right? There is no reproach up against you. Finish. Everything is done. Kullu mawlud yulad ala fitratil Islam. Every child is born on the fitrah of Islam. This is what Prophet Muhammad has taught. Where is this waladuz zina thing coming from? And then we find these ahadith that you cannot drink the milk of a non-Muslim woman, otherwise you will be corrupted like her. I asked this question some time ago, that the Prophet Muhammad was wet nursed by Halima who wasn't a Muslim. And we know this. She embraced Islam much after with her husband when Islam came. But at that time she wasn't a Muslim. Are you going to say that the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ was any less in his human caliber? Think about the senselessness of these things. As I said, I'm giving samplers. Now we have a hadith that Shaykh Ansari quotes in Makasib, in the chapter of gambling. He said one of the later Imams, he sent his servant with some money to buy an egg. The servant bought 2 eggs instead of 1 egg. The Imam ate the egg. And then he asked his servant, well, you had enough money for 1 egg and how did you get 2 eggs? He said, well, I played a little game and, a bit of gambling and I got 2. Imam made himself vomit to take the egg out. So here now we say, subhanallah, look at the Imam. He doesn't want haram material in his tummy. We will say, isn't Imam supposed to have ilmul ghaib in the first instance to not eat something haram? Think about it. On the one hand, we are saying they have ilmul ghaib. On the other hand, he eats the egg. On the third hand, now he's going to make himself vomit and sick and do israf. Does any of it make sense? Does any of it make sense? These are fabrications, concoctions on the name of our blessed Imams. They don't make sense and we are devaluing the Imams. Can you see that? So, okay, fine. The Imam is so pure. So what about ilmul ghaib now? Either accept this or accept that. They're all caught up. Can you see that? When we exercise reason, we find that people get caught out. Now, I know people who obviously grew with me. They would go to, we would be invited for iftaris or in Muharram for meals, and some of our very pious friends would say, have you paid your khums? And the host will say, no. Why embarrass the host? Why? Because I don't want to eat haram food because it will pollute me. Did the Prophet of Islam ever teach this? Nobody was paying khums in the time of Imam Ali, apart from a few. You think Imam Ali didn't go and eat at their house and didn't sit with them? So you are purer than Imam Ali? But these are the attitudes that are created through this sort of literature. So you can see, one of the biggest calamity upon our heads is the hadith. There needs to be a proper approach to discerning what hadith can be admissible. Just because the chain is sahih doesn't mean anything. Its content may be totally against the Quran, and it can be totally irrational. Now obviously, the Sunnis have the same problem as we have. Abu Hanifa rejected majority of the ahadith because it didn't make sense to him. In any case, you have this, hadith of ijma, la tajtami ummati ala khata'in, and they are totally confused as to how to use this hadith in jurisprudence or in theology. And if they're talking about Saqifa, then the people were punching each other. There was no ijma. But they're using it to justify khilaf of Abu Bakr. Similarly, the Sunnis have a hadith, sahabi kan nujum. My companions are like stars. بِأَيِّهِمْ اقْتَدَيْتُمْ اهْتَدَيْتُمْ. Whichever one you follow, you'll be guided aright, right? This is the hadith. Now you think, wait a minute. The Sahaba are fighting against each other. Which one of the two are true? Muawiyah raised his arms against Imam Ali salamullah alayhi. Of course Muawiyah is wrong. Imam Ali is right. Oh Prophet, how did you say this? Wait a minute, we look at the Quran. The Quran is talking about cutting off the hands of a male and a female thief who are presumably Muslims. And if they are Muslims, they are Sahaba. So Sahaba's hands are being cut. الزاني والزانية فاجلدوا كل واحد منهما مئة جلدة. The male and the female fornicators, flog them 100 lashes. They are presumably Sahaba, and the Islamic code is being applied to them. Should we follow these sort of Sahaba? You can see the falsity of this hadith. My time is finished, but I want to say a bit more. Look at the attitudes that we come out with after this, just following on from what I said yesterday, that we begin to even hate the names that are associated with the other camp. And our Imams never hated the names. The people might have been wrong, but the Imams never harbored such hatred and curse, vengeance and venomous attitudes and bitter hearts. They weren't. They were full of clemency like their grandfather, like their God. But think about this. This is going to be a bit challenging. So, okay. On the night of Hijrah, Imam Ali slept in the bed of the Prophet, and the verse was revealed. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَشْرِ نَفْسُ ابْتِغَاءَ وَمَرَضَاتِ اللَّهِ. And from the people are those who sell their lives to procure the pleasure of God. And that's for Imam Ali salamullah alayhi. Brilliant. Then we have another verse in Surah Tawbah, which says, إِذْ قَالَ لِصَاحِبِهِ لَا تَحْزَنْ إِنَّ اللَّهَ مَعَنَا. He said to his companion, do not grieve, God is with us. Now, it is claimed that Sahabi in the cave was Abu Bakr. So here now, we say that the verse was revealed in relation to the Prophet Muhammad and Abu Bakr. Can you see that? So now the Shias, Sunnis will say, Subhanallah, Abu Bakr has been alluded to in the Quran. Not by name, but it's been alluded to. The Shias will say, see, Abu Bakr was crying out so that the kuffar could find them. And that is why the Prophet is saying, you have no trust in Allah. Don't worry, God is with us. The Prophet needed to console him. Can you see that? That's the way Shias interpreted. I want to turn it. What if Imam Ali was in the cave with the Prophet and this verse was revealed? How would we interpret it? We would say, see, Imam Ali was worried about the life of the Prophet. And the Prophet was saying, Ali, don't worry, Allah is with us. I will be saved. Are you seeing what these things are doing to us and the way we are understanding things and the way we are approaching them? That objectivity goes all together. There is nothing left there for us to objectively assess anymore. Similarly, Ghadir. And I'm going to talk about this further in the next few days. We know it was an important event. The Prophet has called everyone. He has said to them, do I not have a greater right upon you than you yourselves? They said, yes. He said, this Ali is your Mawla after me or with me. O Allah, be an enemy of whoever is an enemy of his, and be a friend of whoever is a friend of his. Then, according to Sunni literature, the Prophet ordered for a tent to be pitched and everybody went inside and congratulated Imam Ali. The Sunnis are saying, well, he just meant friend. They say, are you really, is your brain gone? Have your brains gone? The Prophet has done all of this just to say he's my friend. He has already said all of these things previously to you. This is an important event, you know it. But their biases will not allow them to see the literature accurately. Similarly, the Sahaba are called radiyallahu anhu. So Imam Ali is called radiyallahu an. But Bukhari says, we say alayhi salam for Ali. And the Ahlul Bayt, we say alayhi salam. You ask the Sunni brothers, they say, no, but if we say alayhi salam to Ali, then we are putting him above the rest of the Sahaba. This is how the Hadith literature has plagued our minds to the extent that we have lost appreciation of Islam. It is as if we read the Quran and we do not read the Quran at all. We just have these ahadiths shaping our worldviews, and we are cocooned in a little box, and that is our universe. And the whole of the wider universe, the glorious Islam, has just passed by. We come to our beloved Imam Hussein. And these were the same things that were plaguing the people around Imam Hussein. Those people who wanted to kill him found justifications. Today, many of the Salafi scholars say Imam Hussein was wrong. He should not have risen against Yazid. It's this literature that plagues their heads. As it plagues this side, it plagues that side. Imam Hussein has to exit from Makkah, fearing assassination. Ibn Abbas comes to him. He says, "O Hussein, why do you make way for Kufa? Can you really trust these people?" The Imam said, "Even though I know that the road ahead is filled with dangers, yet I know these people will search me out and they will put me to death. And I do not want the sanctity of Medina and Mecca to be violated by the spilling of my blood." Then of course we hear the Zakireen, and I wish to convey the sentiment. He said, "O Hussein, what is your intent for going towards Kufa?" He said, "God wishes to see me martyred." "Why do you take your women?" "God wishes to see them captives." "Why do you take your children?" "God wishes to see them scatter within the dust and the plains of Karbala." Imam Hussein is making his way towards Kufa. He meets with somebody coming from Kufa. He asks about the people of Kufa and their mindset. He said, "Their hearts are with you, but their swords have turned against you." He continues on his journey. Somebody else comes from the route of Kufa. "What news do you bring of Kufa?" He said, "I bring the news of the beheading of Muslim ibn Aqil. He was beheaded on the roof of Darul Imara, and his body was thrown upon the ground, and it was dragged behind horses and camels, and his head was placed on top of a spear." Imam wept bitterly, and he said, "We will set camp here." He called on the relatives of Muslim, obviously his brothers and some of his children, consoled them. There was great commotion within the camp. As they were all crying, We hear that the little daughters of Muslim were perplexed. Imam summoned them. He was their uncle from both sides. And he caressed their heads. And he said, "O children, fear not. If your father is no longer, I am your father." When people started uttering the words, the daughters of Muslims have become yatima, orphans. The little daughter of Hussein asked, "O father, what is an orphan?" I will say, "Sakina, it shan't be long, and you will know what an orphan is. When your garments catch fire, and there is nobody to put it out. When your earrings are snatched, when your face is slapped, and you call on to your father, and your father comes not for your aid, know at that time that you have become an orphan." Matam Hussein.